The sirens screamed through Luna Base as Captain Jake Morrison ran down the metal hallway with his rifle in hand. Behind him, the sound of alien weapons tore through the walls like paper. The Vorthak had finally broken through the last defense line, and now they were coming for what remained of humanity. Jake's boots hit the floor hard as he turned the corner and saw his team waiting for him in the control room. Lieutenant Amy Carter stood by the door with her weapon ready, while Dr. Kevin Walsh worked at a computer screen that showed flashing red warnings everywhere. The other 10 soldiers in their unit watched the sealed doors with nervous eyes. "How long do we have?" Jake asked as he reached them. Amy looked at her watch and shook her head. "Maybe 10 minutes before they cut through the blast doors. The evacuation ships are gone. We saw them blow up from the observation deck." Jake felt his heart sink, but kept his face calm. He had been a soldier for 15 years and had seen many battles against the Vorthak Empire. They were tall gray aliens with 4 arms and black eyes that showed no mercy. For over a century, they had been killing humans across the galaxy, and now they had finally reached Earth's moon base. Dr. Walsh turned away from his computer and walked over to Jake. His white coat was dirty and torn from the fighting. "Captain, I have something that might help us. It's not tested, but it could work." "What is it?" Jake asked. The doctor led him to a large metal box in the corner of the room. It had wires and tubes coming out of it that connected to the base's power system. "It's a quantum weapon prototype. We've been working on it for 2 years, but never had a chance to test it. The theory says it could create a temporal rift in space." Jake looked at the strange device. "What does that mean?" "It means it could tear a hole in time itself, but whoever operates it will probably die. The quantum energy is too much for a human body to handle." The sound of cutting tools came through the blast doors. Sparks flew as the Vorthak worked to break in. Jake knew they only had minutes left before the aliens would pour into the room and kill them all. "Will it stop them?" Jake asked. Dr. Walsh nodded. "If my calculations are right, it should create an explosion that will destroy half, the base and everything in it. The Vorthak won't survive it." Jake looked at his team. These were good people who had fought beside him for years. Amy had saved his life 3 times. Dr. Walsh had developed weapons that helped them win many battles. The other soldiers were young but brave. They all deserved better than to die trapped in this room. "I'll do it," Jake said. "No," Amy said quickly. "Let me do it. You're needed to lead the others." Jake shook his head. "There are no others left, Amy. We're the last humans in the galaxy. If this works, maybe someone will remember that we fought to the end." The blast doors started to glow red as the Vorthak cut through them. Jake walked to the quantum device and Dr. Walsh showed him which buttons to press. The machine started to hum with power, and the lights in the room flickered. "Jake, wait," Amy said. "What if you survive somehow? What if the quantum energy doesn't kill you?" Jake smiled at her. "Then I'll find a way to make them pay for what they did to our people." The blast doors fell down with a loud crash and Vorthak soldiers poured into the room. They were 8 feet tall with gray skin and carried plasma weapons that could melt through steel. Their black eyes fixed on the humans as they raised their guns. Jake pressed the activation button on the quantum device. The machine made a high, whining sound and blue light started to fill the room. The Vorthak stopped and looked around in confusion as the air itself began to shimmer. "Tell the stars that humans fought to the end," Jake said into his radio as the quantum energy built up around him. The last thing he saw was Amy's face as she nodded at him with tears in her eyes. Then the blue light became too bright to see anything, and Jake felt the quantum energy flow through his body like lightning. The pain was terrible, but he held on to the activation switch as the device reached maximum power. The explosion that followed shook the entire moon and created a crater, where half of Luna Base used to be. The Vorthak fleet in orbit detected the massive energy release and saw that most of their invasion force had been destroyed. They decided that the cost of finishing off the humans was too high and retreated to their ships. Within hours, Vorthak, Command declared that humanity was extinct across all known star systems. The last human stronghold had fallen, and no evacuation ships had escaped. After 127 years of war, they had finally won. But in the quantum explosion, something impossible had happened. Jake Morrison's body had been torn apart and rebuilt by forces that science barely understood. The temporal rift had grabbed him and thrown him forward through time and space to a place where no human had ever been. The Vorthak celebrated their victory while Jake drifted unconscious through the void between stars, his body changed by quantum energy in ways that would make him more than human. The war was over, but the legend was just beginning. Jake woke up slowly and felt warm sunlight on his face. His eyes opened to see a purple sky with 2 orange suns hanging above him. This was not Luna Base, and these were not Earth's stars. He tried to sit up and found that his body felt different, somehow stronger and more alive than it had ever been. A tall figure moved into his view, and Jake saw his first alien that was not trying to kill him. The being had green, scaly skin and large golden eyes that looked kind. It wore simple blue robes and carried a bowl of water in its 3-fingered hands. "You are awake, strange one," the alien said in perfect English. "We have been caring for you for many months. My name is Elder Zon Cathara of the Thessaran people." Jake sat up and looked around. He was lying on a soft bed in a room made of white stone. Through the window, he could see a city of tall spires and flying vehicles. Everything looked peaceful and beautiful, nothing like the war zones he remembered. "Where am I?" Jake asked. "What happened to my base? What happened to the war?" Elder Zon sat down in a chair next to the bed. "You are on Thessara Prime, our home world. We found you in a crater in our northern desert 300 years ago. Your body was badly damaged, but still alive. We brought you here and used our medical arts to heal you." Jake stared at the alien. 300 years? That's impossible. I was just fighting the Vorthak on Luna Base. The war was happening." "The war you speak of ended long ago," Elder Zon said gently. "The Vorthak Empire fell apart shortly after they declared victory over your people. They fought among themselves until their civilization collapsed. Your species is remembered only in old records and stories." Jake felt his world collapse around him. Amy, Dr. Walsh, all his friends and fellow soldiers were dead. Not just dead, but dead for 3 centuries. Humanity itself was gone, and he was alone in a galaxy full of strangers. "How am I still alive?" Jake asked. Elder Zon showed him a small device that beeped softly. "Your body gives off quantum energy. We believe the weapon you activated changed you in ways we do not understand. You heal from injuries very quickly, and you do not seem to age like normal beings." Jake looked at his hands and saw that they appeared normal but felt incredibly strong. When he stood up, his body moved with perfect balance and coordination. The quantum explosion had not killed him, but had made him into something more than human. "We have preserved some things from your people," Elder Zon said. "Would you like to see them?" The elder led Jake through the city to a large building that looked like a museum. Inside were displays showing artifacts from human colonies that the Thessarans had collected over the centuries. Jake saw weapons, tools, artwork, and even personal items that had belonged to his people. "Why did you save these things?" Jake asked. "Because your species fascinated us," Elder Zon replied. "The records show that humans fought with incredible courage against impossible odds. Even when faced with extinction, you never surrendered. Other species in the galaxy speak of humans as legends, warriors who chose death over defeat." Jake stopped in front of a display that showed a human military uniform like the one he had worn. Next to it was a plaque that read, "In memory of humanity, who taught the galaxy that some things are worth dying for." "What is the galaxy like now?" Jake asked. Elder Zahn led him to another room where a large map showed star systems and trade routes. After the Vorthak fell, many new civilizations rose to take their place. We now have the Galactic Confederation, which includes 47 different species. There is still conflict, but nothing like the war your people endured. Jake learned that the Thesserans were a peaceful species that valued knowledge and art. They had been some of the first to join the Confederation and worked as mediators between other races. They were also scientists and had been studying the quantum crater where they found Jake for decades. "You cannot stay hidden here forever," Elder Zahn said. "Your quantum signature is unique, and other species will eventually detect it. Some may want to study you, while others may see you as a threat." Jake knew the Elder was right, but he did not know what to do. He was the last human in a galaxy that had moved on without his species. The idea of being alone forever filled him with despair. Over the following weeks, Jake tried to live quietly among the Thesserans. He learned their language and customs while they taught him about the modern galaxy. The Thesserans were kind to him, but he could see in their eyes that they viewed him as something between a curiosity and a ghost from the past. Everything changed when raiders attacked a Thesseran farming settlement on the edge of their territory. The local security forces were overwhelmed and called for help. Jake was visiting the settlement when the attack began and saw families running in terror as armed aliens destroyed their homes. Without thinking, Jake grabbed a farming tool and charged at the raiders. His enhanced body moved faster than he had ever imagined possible. He disarmed 3 raiders before they could react and use their own weapons against the others. Within minutes, the entire raiding party was either dead or fleeing in panic. The Thesseran farmers stared at Jake in amazement. They had heard stories of human warriors, but had never seen anything like what he had just done. Word of the incident spread quickly through their communication networks. "You fight like the old stories say humans fought," one farmer told Jake. "Fast and fierce, with no fear of death." Jake realized that he could not hide what he was. The quantum energy had made him stronger and faster than any normal being. More importantly, it had given him something he thought he had lost forever: a purpose. There were still innocent people in the galaxy who needed protection from those who would harm them. Elder Zahn found Jake that evening sitting by the crater where he had been discovered. "You cannot pretend to be something you are not," the Elder said. "The galaxy may have forgotten humans, but it still needs what your people represented." Jake looked up at the stars and thought about Amy and Dr. Walsh and all the others who had died fighting for something greater than themselves. He was the last human, but maybe that meant he had a responsibility to show the galaxy what humanity had stood for. "What should I do?" Jake asked. "Be who you are," Elder Zahn replied. "Be human." Jake decided to leave Thessera Prime and see what the galaxy had become. He took the name Nathan Cross to hide his identity and began traveling on cargo ships between star systems. Elder Zahn had given him credits and a fake identity card that would pass most security checks. The first crisis happened on a space station called Haven Point. Jake was eating in a cantina when 3 armed Krell pirates burst through the door demanding that everyone hand over their valuables. The Krell were large reptilian beings with sharp claws and bad tempers. Jake watched as the pirates threatened a family of small, furry aliens who were traveling with their young children. The father tried to protect his family, but one pirate knocked him down with the butt of his weapon. When the mother cried out, the pirate raised his gun toward her. Jake moved without thinking. He grabbed a metal chair and threw it at the first pirate, hitting him so hard that the alien flew across the room. The second pirate turned his weapon toward Jake, but found that the human was already behind him. Jake broke the pirate's arm and took his gun in one smooth motion. The third pirate fired at Jake, but somehow missed, even though they were only 10 feet apart. Jake rolled behind a table and came up firing. His shot hit the pirate in the shoulder and sent him crashing into the wall. The entire fight lasted less than 30 seconds. The other people in the cantina stared at Jake in shock as he helped the alien family to their feet. Security forces arrived minutes later, but the pirates were already gone, dragging their wounded with them. "How did you move so fast?" "The station," security chief asked Jake. "I've never seen anyone fight like that." Jake just shrugged and said he had been lucky. But word of the incident spread through the station's communication networks. People began talking about a mysterious human who had fought off 3 Krell pirates single-handedly. Similar incidents followed Jake wherever he went. On the mining world of Xerion, he stopped a group of slavers from kidnapping workers. On the trade hub of New Damascus, he prevented terrorists from bombing a diplomatic conference. Each time, Jake tried to stay anonymous, but stories about his actions spread faster than he could travel. The stories grew in the telling. Some said he was 8 feet tall and could stop energy blasts with his bare hands. Others claimed he was a ghost who appeared and disappeared at will. The truth was less dramatic, but still impressive. Jake's quantum-enhanced body let him move faster and hit harder than any normal being. The name Ghost Warrior started appearing in underground networks, and criminal organizations began warning their members about a mysterious fighter who protected the innocent. Government intelligence agencies took notice and began trying to identify this unknown operative. Jake's biggest test came when he learned about the invasion of Alethri Prime. The Alethri were a peaceful species that looked like tall blue humanoids with large eyes and gentle voices. They had no military and relied on the Galactic Confederation for protection. The Nexari Empire had decided that Alethri Prime would make a good colony world for their expanding population. The Nexari were aggressive militaristic aliens who believed that might made right. They had launched a surprise attack and overwhelmed the small Confederation Defense Force. Jake watched news reports showing Alethri cities burning and families fleeing their homes. The Confederation was preparing a response, but the bureaucracy was slow, and many Alethri would die before help arrived. Jake could not stand by and watch another species face extinction. He bought passage on a smuggler's ship and made his way to the Alethri system. The Nexari had established orbital bases and were sending troops down to the planet's surface. Their ships were powerful and well-armed, but Jake had advantages they did not expect. His first target was a Nexari supply depot on one of the system's moons. Jake infiltrated the base during a shift change and used explosives to destroy their ammunition stores. The explosion was visible from orbit and sent a clear message that the invasion was not going as planned. Next, Jake hijacked a Nexari transport ship by hiding in a cargo container until it reached the main fleet. Once aboard, he used the ship's communication system to broadcast false orders that sent 3 destroyer squadrons to investigate phantom rebel attacks in empty space. The Nexari commanders began to panic as more of their facilities were sabotaged and their forces were led into traps. They had never faced an enemy who used such unconventional tactics. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming firepower and direct assault, not guerrilla warfare. Jake's most daring operation was the rescue of 5,000 Alethri civilians, who were trapped in the capital city. Nexari forces had surrounded the city and were preparing to level it with orbital bombardment. Jake needed to get the civilians out, but had no ships large enough to evacuate them. He solved the problem by capturing a Nexari troop ship and broadcasting a fake distress signal. When 3 more Nexari ships came to investigate, Jake used their own weapons against them. The confused Nexari forces ended up destroying each other while Jake escaped with the civilian refugees. The Alethri called him the Phantom because he seemed to appear and disappear like a ghost. Nexari soldiers began to desert their posts rather than face an enemy they could not see or predict. Morale in the invasion force collapsed as reports of impossible defeats spread through their ranks. Within 2 weeks, Jake had turned a successful invasion into a military disaster. The Nexari fleet retreated to orbit and demanded reinforcements, but their high command was too embarrassed to admit that one unknown operative had defeated an entire invasion force. The Elethri were saved, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. Word of the Ghost Warriors' victories would spread throughout the galaxy and attract attention from enemies and allies alike. Every military intelligence service would be looking for him, and some would want to capture or kill him. Jake found himself thinking about Amy and Dr. Walsh and all the other humans who had died fighting impossible odds. They had faced extinction with courage and honor, never surrendering even when defeat was certain. Now Jake was carrying on their legacy in a galaxy that had forgotten what humanity represented. He was no longer just the last human trying to survive. He had become something more, a symbol of resistance against tyranny and a protector of the innocent. The Ghost Warrior was becoming a legend, and legends had power that went beyond mere weapons or tactics. But legends also attracted enemies, and Jake knew that his greatest battles were still ahead of him. Dr. Lisa Grant had spent her entire career studying the extinct human species. As a member of the scholarly Vanthari race, she was naturally curious about cultures and civilizations, but humans fascinated her more than any other species she had researched. The Vanthari looked like tall, thin humanoids, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and love of knowledge. Lisa had written several books about human military tactics and had visited every known human battlefield. Her latest research focused on the final battle at Luna Base. She had spent months analyzing quantum readings from the crater where the human stronghold had been destroyed. The energy signatures were unlike anything in scientific records and suggested that something extraordinary had happened during the explosion. Lisa's instruments detected quantum traces that seemed to move through space over time. It was as if pieces of the Luna Base explosion had been scattered across the galaxy like seeds on the wind. Most of the traces were too faint to follow, but one signature was much stronger than the others. The trail led her to the Elethri system, where reports of the Ghost Warriors' activities had been circulating for weeks. Lisa arrived just as the Nexari fleet was retreating from their failed invasion. She interviewed Elethri survivors and studied the sites where the mysterious operative had struck. The fighting techniques described by witnesses matched patterns from human military manuals that Lisa had studied. The Ghost Warrior used improvised weapons, hit-and-run tactics, and psychological warfare in ways that were distinctly human. But humans had been extinct for 3 centuries. Lisa's breakthrough came when she detected the same quantum signature at multiple attack sites. Her scanners picked up energy traces that matched the Luna Base explosion exactly. Either someone had found a way to duplicate that unique quantum pattern, or someone had actually survived the weapon that destroyed the last human stronghold. She tracked the signature to a Nexari prison ship that was holding captured Elethri civilians. Lisa arrived in her research vessel just as the ship's security systems were failing. Internal sensors showed that someone was moving through the prison, levels with impossible speed and efficiency. Lisa made a decision that would change her life forever. Instead of observing from a safe distance, she docked with the prison ship and went aboard. She found chaos in the corridors as Nexari guards fought an enemy they could not see or catch. In the central prison block, Lisa saw him for the first time. A human male was freeing the Elethri prisoners with quick, precise movements that seemed to flow like water. He disabled security systems with an intuitive understanding of alien technology that should have been impossible. When he turned and saw Lisa, their eyes met for a moment that seemed to last forever. She saw intelligence, sadness, and determination in his gaze. But she also saw something else. The weight of being absolutely alone in the universe. "You're human," Lisa said in amazement. Jake paused in his work of cutting through the cell locks. He had been so focused on the rescue mission that he had not noticed the Vanthari scientist entering the prison block. Now, he faced a choice. Eliminate a witness or trust someone with his secret. Yes, Jake said simply. And you're going to help me get these people out of here. Lisa nodded without hesitation. She had dedicated her life to studying human culture, and now she was meeting the last member of that species. Whatever else happened, she would not let this moment pass without learning everything she could. Together, they evacuated the prisoners to Lisa's research ship, while Jake sabotaged the Nexari vessel's engines. As they escaped, Lisa showed Jake her collection of human artifacts and data files. She had recordings from the colony ship Horizon that included personal messages from Earth's final days. Among the recordings, Jake found something that broke his heart and gave him new hope at the same time. His younger sister Emma had made a video message just before the Vorthak attacked her colony. In it, she spoke about her belief that humans would someday return to the stars and build something better than what they had lost. I've been researching quantum signatures from the Luna base explosion, Lisa told Jake as he watched his sister's message. You're not the only one who survived. The quantum weapon scattered human consciousness across space and time. There are others out there. Jake looked at her with new interest. How many others? I don't know yet, but my calculations suggest at least a dozen strong signatures. Some may be like you, physically transported by the quantum explosion. Others might be in different forms or states of existence. For the first time in months, Jake felt something other than loneliness. The possibility that other humans had survived gave him a reason to hope beyond mere revenge against the galaxy's oppressors. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency transmission. Admiral Thex Corval of the Nexari fleet was broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding that the Ghost Warrior surrender himself. The Admiral had taken hostages on 3 different worlds and threatened to execute them unless his enemy revealed himself. He's trying to force you into the open, Lisa said. It's a trap. Jake studied the transmission data. Admiral Corval was a career military officer who had risen through the ranks by achieving victories at any cost. His reputation for brutality was legendary even among the Nexari. The hostages would die regardless of what Jake did. I know it's a trap, Jake said, but I can't let innocent people suffer because of me. This is what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Lisa watched as Jake prepared his weapons and checked his equipment. She was seeing human behavior firsthand and understood why her people had been so fascinated by this extinct species. Even facing impossible odds, Jake never considered abandoning his principles. Take me with you, Lisa said. Jake shook his head. This is my fight. You've already done enough by helping me learn about the other survivors. You don't understand, Lisa insisted. I have resources and connections throughout the galaxy. I can help you find the other humans, and maybe together you can rebuild your species. Jake realized that the Vanthari scientist was offering him something more valuable than weapons or allies. She was offering him hope for the future. But first, he had to deal with Admiral Corval and his threats against innocent civilians. Stay hidden and keep researching, Jake told Lisa. Find the others. If I don't survive this, make sure the galaxy remembers what humans stood for. As Jake prepared to face his greatest challenge yet, he thought about Emma's message and her belief that humans would return to build something better. Maybe she had been right. Maybe the quantum explosion had not ended humanity, but had scattered it across the galaxy like seeds waiting to grow. The Ghost Warrior was about to become something. More than a legend, he was about to become the first step toward humanity's return. Admiral Thex Corval stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the capital world of Zentaris Prime grow larger on the view screen. The massive planet was home to the Galactic Confederation's government, and 47 different species had representatives there. It was the perfect place to draw out the Ghost Warrior. Corval was a tall Nexari with dark gray skin and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. He had built his reputation by winning battles that other commanders thought were impossible. But the Ghost Warrior had made him look like a fool in front of the entire Nexari military command. Deploy the assault shuttles, Corval ordered. I want the government district surrounded and all escape routes blocked. When the Ghost Warrior comes to save these pathetic creatures, we'll be ready for him. The Nexari invasion force descended on Zentaris Prime like a storm. Their ships blocked orbital traffic while ground forces occupied key buildings. Millions of beings from dozens of species found themselves trapped as hostages in Corval's plan to capture one human. Jake watched the invasion from a stolen Nexari scout ship hidden in the asteroid belt. Lisa's research vessel was nearby, monitoring communications and tracking the enemy fleet movements. They had worked together for weeks, preparing for this confrontation. The Confederation fleet is assembling, but they won't attack while civilians are in danger, Lisa reported. Corval has positioned his forces perfectly. Any assault would result in massive casualties. Jake studied the tactical displays showing Nexari positions throughout the capital. It was a well-planned operation designed to force him into a direct confrontation with overwhelming odds. Corval clearly understood human psychology and knew that Jake would never abandon innocent hostages. I'm going in, Jake said. It's suicide, Lisa protested. The entire Nexari battle fleet is waiting for you. Even with your enhanced abilities, you can't fight that many enemies at once. Jake smiled grimly. Amy used to tell me that humans don't calculate odds before doing what's right. We just do what needs to be done and figure out the details later. He launched his small ship toward the planet, while Lisa coordinated with the Confederation fleet. The plan was simple in concept, but nearly impossible to execute. Jake would infiltrate Corval's flagship and disable its command systems while the Confederation forces attacked the scattered Nexari fleet. Jake's ship screamed through the atmosphere under heavy fire from Nexari defense platforms. His enhanced reflexes let him pilot through attack patterns that would have destroyed any normal craft. He crashed his vessel into the flagship's hangar bay and fought his way through the security forces. The Nexari troops had never faced anything like Jake's fighting style. He moved through their formation like lightning, using their own weapons against them and turning their numerical advantage into chaos. Corridors designed for large Nexari bodies became death traps when a smaller human could move through them at impossible speeds. Admiral Corval tracked Jake's progress through the ship's internal sensors. All units converge on Section 7. I want that human captured alive if possible, but dead if necessary. Jake fought running battles through the flagship's levels, always moving toward the bridge. His quantum-enhanced body allowed him to absorb damage that would have killed any normal being. Nexari energy weapons left burns on his skin, but the wounds healed within minutes. The final confrontation came in the ship's reactor chamber. Corval waited there with his personal guard and a dozen of his best soldiers. The Admiral held a device that would overload the reactor and destroy the ship along with half the Nexari fleet. So the last human finally shows himself, Corval said as Jake entered the chamber. You've caused me considerable embarrassment, Ghost Warrior, but now I'll have the honor of ending your species once and for all. Jake looked around the reactor, chamber, and saw that Corval had positioned his forces to block all exits. The Admiral clearly intended this to be a fight to the death, with no possibility of escape. Humans have been ending for 300 years, Jake replied. But we never really die. We become legends that inspire others to stand up against bullies like you. The battle that followed would be remembered throughout galactic history. Jake fought with the desperation of his entire species, while Corval's forces had the advantages of numbers and firepower. Energy blasts lit up the reactor chamber as Jake moved between cover points, taking down enemies one by one. Jake used every trick he had learned in a lifetime of warfare. He turned the reactor's control panels into weapons, used steam pipes as cover, and fought with pieces of broken equipment when his ammunition ran out. The Nexari soldiers fell back as their careful formation dissolved into chaos. Admiral Corval finally faced Jake in single combat, while the reactor countdown showed only minutes remaining. The Admiral was larger and stronger, but Jake was faster and more experienced. Their fight ranged across the reactor chamber as explosion warnings echoed through the ship. "Your people were weak," Corval snarled as he swung his claws at Jake. "That's why we destroyed them so easily." Jake ducked under the attack and drove his fist into the Admiral's chest. "My people fought a 100-year war against impossible odds and never surrendered. We chose extinction over slavery." Corval stumbled backward toward the reactor core. "And now you'll die alone with no one to remember your sacrifice." "Wrong," Jake said. "The whole galaxy is watching." Jake activated his communication device and broadcast on all frequencies. His image and voice reached every ship in the system and every planet in the Confederation. For the first time, the Ghost Warrior revealed his true identity to the universe. "My name is Jake Morrison, captain in the human military forces. I am the last survivor of humanity's war against oppression. Today I speak not just for my extinct people, but for every species that refuses to bow to tyranny." The broadcast continued as Jake fought to prevent the reactor overload. Throughout the galaxy, beings from dozens of species watched as the legendary Ghost Warrior revealed himself to be the last human. The revelation sent shockwaves through every government and military command. Jake managed to stop the reactor countdown but suffered severe injuries in the process. As Nexari reinforcements arrived, he prepared for his final stand. But suddenly, the flagship shook under massive weapons fire as the Confederation fleet attacked with unprecedented fury. The sight of humanity's last son fighting alone against impossible odds had inspired the galaxy. Species that had been cautious about military action now threw everything they had at the Nexari fleet. The battle for Zentaris Prime became a crusade against oppression. Jake escaped the flagship as it broke apart under enemy fire. He was rescued by a Confederation cruiser whose crew treated him with the respect due to a living legend. But Jake knew this was only the beginning of his real mission. The galaxy would never be the same after Jake Morrison revealed himself as the last human. His broadcast from Admiral Corval's flagship had reached every inhabited system, and the reaction was immediate. Species that had only known humans as myths suddenly realized that one of these legendary warriors had been protecting them for months. Jake found himself the most famous being in the galaxy overnight. Every government wanted to honor him, every military wanted to recruit him, and every media outlet wanted to interview him. But Jake had only one priority: finding the other human survivors that Dr. Lisa Grant's research had detected. Lisa's quantum signature tracking had identified 12 strong readings scattered across the galaxy. Working together, they established the Human Legacy Foundation with funding from dozens of grateful civilizations. Their mission was simple: locate every surviving human and help rebuild their civilization. The first survivor they found was on a remote mining world called Titan 7, Captain Ben. Rogers had been a pilot during the final war and had survived the quantum explosion in a similar way to Jake. He had been working as a mechanic for 30 years, hiding his enhanced abilities and trying to live a quiet life. "I thought I was going crazy," Ben told Jake when they met. "The quantum energy made me stronger and faster, but I didn't know what it meant. I figured I was the only one left and tried to forget I was ever human." The second survivor was Dr. Carol Stone, a scientist who had been experimenting with quantum technology when Luna Base was destroyed. She had spent 3 centuries in a form of suspended animation inside a research station's computer systems. Lisa's team found her when they detected unusual energy patterns in an abandoned facility. More survivors emerged as word spread throughout the galaxy. Some had been hidden in temporal stasis, while others had been transformed by the quantum explosion into beings of pure energy. A few had even survived by hiding in alternate dimensions that the weapon had briefly opened. The most remarkable discovery was a small colony on the edge of known space. 200 humans had escaped Earth's destruction by using an experimental faster-than-light drive that accidentally transported them to another galaxy. They had spent 3 centuries building a new civilization while believing they were the only survivors. Jake worked tirelessly to bring all the survivors together. He established New Terra, a world where humans and their allies could rebuild their culture and plan for the future. The planet became a symbol of hope and renewal that attracted beings from throughout the galaxy. But Jake's greatest achievement was not finding other humans. It was changing how the galaxy thought about itself. His example had inspired a new philosophy called the human doctrine, which became a cornerstone of interspecies law. The doctrine stated that no species should face extinction alone and that the strong had a responsibility to protect the weak. It encouraged beings to stand up against oppression regardless of the odds. Military academies began teaching human tactics, while governments adopted human principles of justice and freedom. Jake found himself serving as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Confederation. He spoke before the assembly of 47 species and shared the lessons his people had learned through their struggle for survival. Humans were not the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy, Jake told the assembled delegates. We were just the most stubborn. When faced with extinction, we refused to give up. When offered slavery, we chose death. When asked to abandon our principles, we said no. The response was overwhelming. Species after species stood to pledge their support for the human doctrine. Even former enemies like the reformed Nexari government agreed to adopt human principles in their own laws. Years passed, and Jake watched as New Terra grew from a small settlement to a thriving world. Human children played alongside young beings from dozens of other species. The next generation grew up learning about courage, sacrifice, and the importance of standing up for what was right. Jake often visited the memorial to fallen humanity that stood at the center of New Terra's capital city. The monument bore the names of every human who had died in the war against the Vorthak, including Amy Carter and Dr. Kevin Walsh. Below their names was the inscription, "They chose to die as humans rather than live as slaves," Dr. Lisa Grant continued. Her research and eventually became Jake's closest advisor and friend. She helped establish universities where human culture and history were taught alongside the traditions of other species. Her work ensured that humanity's legacy would survive even if the species faced extinction again. One evening, Jake stood on a hill overlooking New Terra's growing city. The sky showed 3 moons and the lights of orbital stations where humans and aliens worked together on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. It was not the future he had imagined during those desperate final hours on Luna Base. Lisa joined him on the hill and showed him a restored recording that had been found in the ruins of Earth's final transmission center. The message was from Earth's government to any survivors who might someday return to the stars. To whoever finds this message, remember us not for how we died, but for how we lived, the recording said. We faced the darkness and chose to be lights for others to follow. If you are human, carry on our traditions. If you are not human, remember that some things are worth fighting for regardless of the cost. Jake smiled as he listened to the words. His people had not just survived extinction, they had taught the galaxy what it meant to have hope in the face of impossible odds. The last human had become the first legend. But more importantly, he had ensured that the legend would inspire others long after he was gone. Children of multiple species played in the streets of New Terra, their games inspired by stories of human courage and determination. They acted out battles where small forces defeated larger ones through cleverness and bravery. They learned that being a hero was not about being the strongest, but about standing up for those who could not protect themselves. The Vorthak Empire, that had once seemed unstoppable, was now just a footnote in history books. But humanity's influence spread throughout the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Every time someone stood up to a bully, every time the weak were protected by the strong, every time someone chose to do what was right instead of what was easy, humanity lived on. Jake Morrison had begun as Earth's last soldier and become the galaxy's first legend. But his greatest victory was not surviving when his species died. His greatest victory was teaching the universe that legends are not born from strength or power. They are born from the choice to never give up hope.